What's going on, Freight Skills? In this video, this is going to be a follow-up to a video that I made a few months ago that was called 5 Ways That Brokers Can Make Carriers' Lives Easier. I wanted to make a follow-up video to that called 5 Ways That Carriers Can Make Brokers' Lives Easier. And now I'm just going to ignore any of the comments below that call brokers lying, greedy, stealing, phony people. All right, so if you comment anything like that, I'm just going to delete it really quickly and block you from my channel. Unfortunately, I have to say that because every single time a broker posts a video, that stuff comes out of the woodwork. Right? This channel is about fun and learning and helping each other grow from both sides of the industry, working together, not tearing each other apart. All right, so without further ado, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss out on any freight broker, carrier, or dispatcher content. All right, we're gonna start catering a little bit more to the full spectrum of logistics businesses, to just as a company and as an industry, it will help move everything forward in the right direction, all right? Here are the 5 things that carriers can do to make freight brokers' lives easier. Because contrary to popular belief, freight brokers who are busy and who are actually doing very well do not have an easy time just sitting at their desk moving paperwork around. Our phone rings all the time, and although we're not sitting behind a truck with 45,000 pounds on our back, which I have tremendous respect for the people who do that, it's not any easier mentally for us to deal with all of the personalities and the problems that arise with our customers. So we both have our struggles, and we can both do a better job to make each other's lives easier. All right, so just here's 5 little things that carriers can do that brokers really appreciate. Number 1 is to pick one form of communication. Now, if you're driving your own truck and you're the one handling your own dispatching, your method of communication is probably going to be the phone, because you probably have a headset that you use to call your brokers and call whoever you need to do, your shippers, your receivers, all that stuff. But the important thing is that primarily your form of contact is one, because if you're emailing some issues, calling some issues in, that can get things a little bit confusing, especially if you're talking to multiple people at a single office. You want to make sure that you focus on one. If it's phone calls, the broker is probably going to try to follow that up with emails, because it's best to have everything in writing, especially with logistics and just for purposes of getting paid from our customers. But if you can focus on one form of communication, it makes brokers' lives a lot easier, because they know to expect an answer from you from that medium, right? So if you're calling, and we're having conversations on the phone, but then you shoot me an email with an update that something got picked up or something's late, or maybe you got a flat tire, I'm gonna be looking at my phone waiting for you to call me with an update, and meanwhile you sent it to my email. Maybe you went to spam and I didn't see it. Picking that one form of communication that's gonna take up the bulk of it is gonna be really important and help brokers with their organization and their expectations. Thing number 2 that you can do is pretty self-explanatory, easier said than done, and that is to send our contracts and everything back on time. And now I know that insurance companies aren't always the quickest with their insurance certificates, and I know that brokers aren't all equipped with the tools that they need to have a quick onboarding process. That's actually why I created my application that's going to be linked down in the description. It's called Truckin', and it helps brokers and carriers unite together for a seamless onboarding process. You can get the whole thing done with one click from the broker side, just fill out some info as a carrier, and everything is done digitally, right? It's really cool. I know not everybody has that right now, but if you're getting contracts from brokers, make sure you're filling them out, sending them back as quick as possible. If you can't send it back quickly, that's okay, but just let the broker know. Just say, look, I'm driving right now. I'm gonna send it back in about 20 to 30 minutes when I have the chance to park at a truck stop. As long as we have an expectation, it helps us say, all right, you know what? If you're gonna send it in 20 minutes, I'll send you the address so you can get moving towards the shipper. If you make our lives easier, it's easier for brokers to help make your job easier, all right? So number 2 is get that paperwork filled out, signed, sent back on time. And if you can't do it quickly, just let them know when you plan to do it so that we know when to expect it. Otherwise, what can happen is if a broker's sitting around too long and waiting for a contract, they'll go and book that load with another carrier. Some of them won't even tell you about it, and then that's when fights start to happen, and you're asking for a cancellation fee, the broker starts ignoring your calls, then you guys go and report each other to carrier 411 and all these places, and then that just creates a bunch of bad blood. All right, so we want to avoid that. Just set the expectation. Number 3 is going to be to communicate delays. Now, what a lot of carriers don't understand is that when you guys or girls incur charges at the shipper or the receiver, the broker is legally obligated to pay those. The problem is the customer is not obligated to pay them. So the broker is not protected like you are. You're protected to get those charges. In most cases, if you knew how to sue and go through the court process, 99% of the charges that you charge brokers, you can collect. Not a lot of carriers do that properly. That's why there's a lot of carriers that complain that they weren't paid delay or things like that, right? They don't get signed in and out times. They don't report their delays. And then they complain that the broker didn't pay them. Well, if you had told the broker up front, the broker then has the obligation to tell their shipper, who then has the obligation to pay the broker. But what happens is a lot of brokers are inexperienced and they don't know that they're supposed to tell their shippers beforehand what happens if there's delays, right? It's otherwise called an accessorial sheet. And then when something happens and they go back to their shipper, the shipper says, "You didn't tell me about that. I'm not paying that because you didn't tell me about it before it happened." And you know what? The shipper's right. But instead of the broker accepting their mistakes and taking accountability for it, they take it out on the carrier by shortchanging them. I can't tell you how to control yourself from working with unethical or just inexperienced brokers that don't know this, but what you can do is prepare for the worst. And the way you do that is by always reporting your delays the second they start happening. If you go in past your 2 hours free or whatever your tariff is, if it's 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, call the broker up, send them an email in writing, tell them, "Look, free time has ended at 12:02 p.m. We will provide in and out times. Detention is billed at $85 an hour, 75, whatever it is." Make sure you tell them that. If you don't tell them that, there's no chance it's getting approved. But if you do tell them that, at least if you're working with an ethical broker, you'll be able to get that compensation. The 4th thing that you can do as a carrier to make a broker's life easier is to send signed PODs as soon as you can. The reason is that we cannot bill our customers until we get signed PODs. This creates a huge cash flow problem for us because most of our customers are paying between 30 and 60 days. More of them are at 60 days. Carriers need to be paid legally in 14 days, right? That's what the law says, the UCR. If you're a carrier and you're waiting 30 days to send your invoice, what that does to the broker is it puts a stress on their finances because they can't bill their customer until you send your bill and POD. If, however, you deliver the load, photograph your POD, send it to the broker, they can immediately turn around and bill their customer. That starts their invoice clock. Your invoice clock starts as soon as you send your invoice. Their invoice clock has the same concept. So the faster you send the broker what they need as far as POD, the faster they can bill their customer. So when everything marries up, they'll be getting paid shortly after they pay you. Now, keep in mind, I am not saying that the broker depends on the customer in order to pay you. It doesn't work like that. Brokers, if you hire a carrier, doesn't matter if your customer jumps off a bridge, they shut down the next day, they file bankruptcy, you are still obligated to your carrier. So brokers, you have to understand that your carrier is not sending you paperwork is not an excuse for you not to pay their bills on time. Your customer could go bankrupt the next day. If you hired your carrier to do a job, you're obligated to pay them. It's not their problem what happened to your customer. You have to handle that part yourself. All right, and it's unfortunate, but that's part of the risks of becoming a broker, which you signed up to do. So I've had my fair share of horror stories. It's not necessarily fair, but what's really unfair is a carrier not getting paid for what they did. And now the 5th thing that carriers can do to make brokers' lives easier is to do what you say you're going to do. Just be honest with us. If you're going to be late, tell us as soon as possible. If you get a flat tire, tell us it's a flat tire. Send us a repair bill. If you say you're 10 minutes away from the shipper, don't show up 45 minutes later. What you have to understand is that we are making decisions and communicating based off of the information that we're getting from you. So if you tell us you're 20 minutes away, you might not know this, but maybe the shipper is closing in 10 minutes and we're paying them overtime to stay and load you so that you can get out on time. Maybe you have a flat tire and we told you it was supposed to deliver the next day, but the flat tire is going to hold you up. That plant might be shut down and the customer might be on our backs trying to charge us for the downtime that the plant is facing because you're late. You don't see that side of the business unless you work with direct shippers, and even so, you still wouldn't see it, just like brokers do. But the fact is, if you say you're gonna do something, just please do it. And if you can't do it, make sure you call and let them know. So if you're running late, usually 9 times out of 10, we can make accommodations for you, but we can't do anything if we don't know that there's an issue. If you tell us you're gonna be there in 20 minutes and you're really 2 hours out, but you just say 20 minutes because you wanna get the load, that's just as unethical as a broker who hires a carrier and decides not to pay them because they showed up a day late. There's unethical practices on both sides of the industry, and what we want to do is eliminate all of those so that we can all play together and grow and make money and drive the logistics industry forward. So now, those are 5 simple but powerful things that all carriers can do to make brokers' lives much, much easier. Brokers, if you haven't already, make sure you go watch my video on what you can do to make carriers' lives easier. Because at the end of the day, like I said, if we both make each other's lives easier, business is going to go much smoother and easier for everybody involved. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If it helped, make sure you subscribe to this channel, like this video so that more drivers, carriers, and brokers can see this content and it'll help them with their businesses too. Now, before you go, I want you to comment down below. Let me know your biggest pet peeve with brokers. That's your chance to sound off in the comments. I like hearing about pet peeves that carriers have with brokers because it helps me put out lessons that help eliminate those pet peeves, right? So if you tell me communication sucks with brokers, I'll make some communication content so that you don't have to deal with it as much, right? If you have a bad communicator, you can send them to my channel and I'll help them out. All right? So I hope you enjoyed this. Until the next video, I will see you soon.